Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to this Scale live show. Agentic AI at the Compliance Edge, Advantage and Exposure. My name is Alistair Cole. I'm a computer scientist and ex-software engineer with 2 decades experience transforming businesses through the implementation of new technologies and overseeing their adoption by evolving workforces. Today, I'm delighted to say that I'm joined by our guest, Alistair Mackey. Hi, Alistair.
Hi there, Alistair. What a great first name you have.
Love that, my friend. Thanks for joining me today. You wear so many hats, Alistair. Lawyer, banker, MBA grad, vibe coder, agentic, developer, entrepreneur, multiple entrepreneurs. Give us a little bit of a background on you for our audience.
Yeah, no problem at all. So, law degree from, pardon me, Edinburgh, and then I kind of worked through advertising and small and medium enterprises, and then I did an MBA at Strathclyde in 2012, which put me into, I looked to jump into finance. I managed to get a job at Lloyd's and worked at Lloyd's through their MBA program for about 11 and a half years. So finance, so I've got a kind of that risk angle in there, if you like. You realize when you leave a big organization like Lloyd's, amazing organization, you get this kind of almost like a risk muscle memory in there. Obviously credit crunch, all the back of that. But towards the end of it, I was working more and more within the innovation teams, digital teams, and was working on an agentic program with one of the big 4 consultancies. And I thought, this is the future, and I'm going to dive into it. So I'm a big fan of Agentic AI. It's been amazing to see the developments that has happened. I'm also got that risk angle on it as well, so I'm not totally drunk the Kool-Aid and jumped in. And I think the EU Act is a really good opportunity for companies to really assess where they're at with it as well, because there's great opportunities to be had, but there's also that angle of there is a bit of trepidation needed and a bit of kind of governance around it all. So so that's where I'm at.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, so you're back north of the border now, right? And I want to come back to Scotland, but before I do, if there are anybody has any questions or comments, fire them in on LinkedIn. As well as Alistair's other hats, he's a co-founder of Scale, along with me, which launched 91 days ago. It was now, and we've got some strong experience working with regulated businesses, regulated SaaS businesses, on top of the law experience that Alistair talked about, Lloyd's at Bank of Ireland. We help them with their AI-assisted development, reducing delivery time on complex platform tasks by up to 50%, while maintaining code quality for 100 people across their repo. You can read more about us at scalewithai.com. It's popping off in the news at the moment, not just with investment in Glasgow and Edinburgh, but obviously the World Cup. I gather that your resources were depleted recently.
It's more so trying to nail down clients, because half of them are away in our first venture over to Boston, and I'm sure quite a few of them participated in trying to drink all the pubs dry, as we did manage. So I think we might not have won the World Cup, but I think we've done a pretty good effort in terms of fans over there also. And big up to England tomorrow night. Just get that in there. So looking forward to the game, and hopefully you guys get through.
Yeah, well, that's very sporting of you, given the rivalry. I had a look at some of the tech news north of the border and found a couple of businesses. Avani in Edinburgh, a fintech firm, has just landed 12 million, and one closer to you, Nebuflow, which is a Glasgow UD spin-off, that secured 2 million in R&D grant from Scottish Enterprise. But you yourself have landed some funding recently, haven't you? Tell us all about that.
So it is, in terms of talking about fintech, obviously I've got an eye on a fintech from my time at Lloyd's, but Fintech Scotland's really active up here, and there's been a lot of really good kind of fintech started up here. It's a really good ecosystem for it. But the ecosystem in general for supporting startups is pretty cool up here. I've managed to secure some funding for my startup, which is WasteSync, which is a digital compliance for waste, kind of solving the waste transport issue, and hope. Well, the big plan is to be the passport for bulk transfer in the UK, and that's a big hairy goal that I'm going for. So yeah, I'm building a regulated SaaS as well as working in consulting the regulated SaaS, Alistair. So I think I'm poacher and gamekeeper, and they're the two hats I'm wearing at the moment. So yeah.
Fantastic. Well, look, we're here today to talk about your compliance expertise and your agentic strengths as well that you developed over the last kind of 12 months and beyond. And obviously, you mentioned it at the top of the show. The EUA Act is just like 19 days away, right? And we know from our work at scale that something like 78% of people are bringing their own AI to work. Well, this shadow AI is massive, and obviously with this looming deadlines, we've been getting into the kinds of things that leaders of regulated SaaS businesses need to be thinking about. Obviously, you're right there building your own ones. So, before we move into the world of agentic, the adventure or the advantage and the exposures, have you got any other thoughts on what's happening with the EUA Act, what business leaders need to think about?
No, I actually think it's coming at quite a good time. It is quite kind of onerous, but I think the speed of the development with the AI is just taking off. I'm thinking about a year ago when I was kind of leaving Lloyd's. I'm very deep into Gemini, so I love the Google ecosystem, not just like the Gemini models themselves, but all the other good things that you get with it. And I think when I was leaving, it was, I was getting into deep research and 2.5, and now we're, 3.5. You could speed up, really, really super fast, super accurate coding that gets out there. You could spin up an agent and have it deployed really, really in about an hour. If from start to finish. You've had OpenClaw come in, obviously, which came in about January or so, and then that blew everyone away. And then the kind of proprietary models and the likes of Claude Code that have arrived as well. And they've brought a kind of level of legitimacy to it because they're frontier model, and Claude's pretty loved by enterprise, and was loved by the US government before they decided they didn't want them to have that final decision. But I do think that also brings another issue in terms of people letting it loose on their files and their code, on their actual files that sit within their local disks, etc. So I think there is a moment to put your foot in the ball and really to understand where you're at. And I think that moment's now. I think it's as good as any.
Yeah, well, we're 19 days away, and the clients and prospects we talk to, they've been thinking about this for a while. They've got stuff in place, and they also keen to get a kind of single view across the entire organization, and that's something we're able to help them with. Talking about the speed to spin stuff up, the advantages, are enormous. McKinsey recently reported that businesses who were successful with their AI-led transformation, seeing a $3 incremental increase in EBITDA versus a single dollar of investment. And there's all kinds of other good stories about shareholder returns going up and workflows being redesigned. So there's huge potential power there. How do you see the implementation or the improvement of workflows through agentic AI in terms of the humans in the loop as well? How can agentic be applied to workforces to improve things?
So I'll strip it back to you. Obviously, you went for McKinsey. I'll go for some of the kind of stuff that you get through social media. So I'm a big fan of Doke, and I love my kind of the Stephen Bartlett podcast. And when you listen to some of the experts, a big theme in there is the fact that if you're not using agentic AI, or you don't have those skills or that capability when you're joining the workforce, particularly at a kind of younger age, you're going to get left behind. And a lot of that might just be somebody that kind of working in the area and really kind of progressive. But there is a lot of mention about a couple of candidates, one's got AI skills and one doesn't have AI skills, and it's quite an obvious choice that you would go down that route of hiring a person with the AI skills. So I think on a personal level, practical level, that you're going to have the skills there to do that. And then just on the other side of that, Greg Eisenberg, who has his startup school, who I'm in startups, I'm trying to immerse myself in that culture. And he's speaking about SaaS businesses in San Francisco that are getting bought, established SaaS businesses that are getting bought for either 2 times multiples of their profit. So, repay within in 2 years, and they're getting bought and then just got totally re-engineered for agentic, and stripped back. So I think it's one that it's not going to go away, and I think it's really seductive to think that you can program Python, and it'll go away and do your tasks. You won't have to hire people. I don't believe that to be the case. I think there still needs to be that human in the loop, but from somewhere that in a corporate world where cost efficiency and bringing it back down to bottom dollar is really kind of paramount. I think that it is really seductive to think that agents can do it all. But I'm not, I'm an evangelist, but I don't think they can. So
yeah, well, I think your point there about new starters needing those skills, it's about it's pervading everything right now. And like you say, if you're not on top of it, if you're not at the coalface, a KPMG survey with Reuters recently found that like 51% of banks were already piloting AI agents. And we're talking about banks, right? It's moving into wealth management, trading, treasury, across the board. And from your point of view,
I was going to say Lloyds have an agent at their board now. So on their board meeting, so that's up with Charlie Nunn, etc., who's the chief exec there. And now they have an agent in there. Now they are quite a progressive organisation. I know it's a big, massive, like risk-averse organisation, but they were, they're pretty progressive, and they have got a really powerful app and all the rest of it. But they have an agent sitting in the board, and they'll be reporting whatever it reports back. But they are out there, and enterprise are looking to adopt them because they do see the value in it. Whether that's been realized yet, I'm a little bit more skeptical on that, in terms of like, has a real, you mentioned that McKinsey report, and McKinsey aren't going to lie, are they? But I'm still a little bit skeptical about everyone getting an even distribution of the improvement through agentic AI.
Yeah. And just for clarity, when we're talking about agentic AI, we're talking about autonomous AI systems that independently set goals, create plans, they execute actions, building on the large language model, which Andrew Karpathy says is the kernel, it's the cornerstone of everything, the intelligence. So there is real power there, but obviously the flip side of that potential advantage, and the disadvantage if you don't move early, is the exposure, right? And we've heard there are some horror stories out there, aren't there?
No, there are that Terraform destroy. I love my I've, as you mentioned, I've been a vibe coder, right, Al? So I went away at the start of the year, and I describe it having like my 4 kids, and then choose my favorite kids. But it's almost like the ones that could survive. But one of the things I was quite keen on is making sure that using infrastructure as code, and then that means that you put your Terraform in there, and Terraform is it's a way of making sure that the code is robust, it can be transferable, but also means that you can put an agent in there that can put Terraform destroy and then just write off all your code. And if you're and it kind of moves into the stage of it, then that's within like the code, right? But that, so what about people that have just got articles, or they've written stuff on their desk, and then they've let an agent loose to organize all their files, to put it in the right way, and it deletes files, or I suppose one of the ones that I'm going to hark this back to WasteSync as well. One of the things that we're dealing with is PII, so private identifiers. And how do you separate that information? So confidential information from non-confidential information. Handle it all around GDPR. Handle it all around all the data processing as well. When you've got an agent that you don't really understand, and you've built because it's powerful and it can go away and do all your work, but when it goes away, it does all the work, and you don't have that oversight of what it does, What happens to that data? Where does it go? Do you breach? Is there a breach? How do you report that breach? How do you actually, how can you stand up and say, yeah, it really wasn't my fault, it was my agent that I built, and it went and it exposed, I don't know, let's go to the extremes, credit card details online
Yeah.
of our customers. So
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
it's, yeah, I think that, well, it's almost like you do need to know what's happening with it, and you do need to understand the build on it, but you don't want to put too many shackles on it as well. So I do appreciate the kind of, I don't know, the friction that's out there. So
Well, it's all AI has so many of these tensions, the yin and the yang, right? That the tension
yep,
between the power of agentic AI and the control required. And you're right, if you throttle it, and this is one of the concerns about the EU with the act coming in,
yep,
that they'll be throttling innovation. I think the
yep,
challenge for UK businesses that we now have different regulations to them, which is going to cause all kinds of challenges as well. But you're right about this tension. And the stats that I've seen, Douglas talks about is 9 seconds that it took Pocket OS agent to basically delete its entire customer database, right, including the backup, in 9 seconds. So the power is
oh
insane, but
wow,
this is where the control is needed, right?
yeah.
Because the exposure is so big.
I think one thing. Sorry,
Go on.
I know you're kind of going at this, but the one thing to kind of bear in mind, this is the EU Act. And a lot of these models are, well, American in the first instance, so they have a different kind of attitude to risk and attitude to kind of development, and a bit more, entrepreneurial, and all of that stuff. And then there's obviously the Chinese angle in there, and the Chinese models are
Yeah.
absolutely, they're really super powerful now. You can download them onto your own machine if you've got a big enough Mac Studio, or you really want to spend a lot of money on Nvidia PCs, so you can get really good power. So America's kind of, what do they say? America innovates, China replicates, and then Europe regulates.
Yeah.
And I think there's, I think there's validity right the way across that the three of them. If I'm honest, and I think there's something that's needed in that. Maybe the Chinese one, in terms of potentially bringing down the cost and making the models a bit more accessible, because there is a danger that the models get built more and more powerful, and then the power sits with people that are prepared to spend a lot of money on it. Because I think the backdrop is it's costing them a lot of money to build them. So
So I
there you
love
go.
that
Sorry.
analogy. The US, China replicates, the EU regulates. Where does the UK fit into that?
I'd like to think that. So I like to think that our innovation is really strong. So one of the big boys is DeepMind, isn't it? And DeepMind's essentially spun out of, was it Oxford or Cambridge?
I
Was
think
DeepMind, and
Cambridge.
that was it Cambridge? Was it Cambridge?
I think
Yeah.
so.
And that's they're leading Google, and Google are right at the forefront of this. So we do the innovation. Whether we manage to keep hold of the innovation once it gets to a certain level where it really becomes like super scalable, I'm not quite sure. So I think we're not going to copy. We're not we're British, aren't we? So we don't really do the copy. We wouldn't do the distillation of US models, etc. So I think we probably sit somewhere between America and Europe, in that, in terms of where we would develop it, but we have a bit more of an eye in the kind of regulation. But
Yeah.
to be honest, that's probably just my personal thoughts on it. I'm not,
Yeah.
a bit of disclaimer on that in terms of that. But that's what I think. I do
Of
think
course.
our universities. I mean, I work quite closely with University of
Yeah.
Strathclyde, and I go to the scale up and the spin out events, and one of the issues that we have is it's not the ideas, it's getting the ideas really to over the valley of death, so they can get built, and then they can get to, maybe to, a Series A, but it's then moving it beyond that, and in terms of turning it into a big mega corporation, and I think that's
Mm.
where we struggle. Um,
Yeah.
I suppose one thing to kind of call out on that is that where the innovation has come and then really exploded is somewhere like ARM as well. So arms, arms and everything. I'm looking at my smartphone there. And chips are the real big commodity at the moment, aren't they? They can't make them quick enough. And that's why
Yes.
your MacBook's going to go up in price, and your everything's going to go skyrocket because they just can't make them enough to handle all the compute that's required. So probably more on the innovation side. It's just, could we harness that? So
yeah. And then you mentioned we've been touching on compliance quite a lot, right?
Yeah.
A lot, governance, your time at your waste sync focus, your time with Lloyd's and stuff.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
as we're talking about exposure, I want to get into controlling a bit. But before we get into how you control it, it's like what well, this does lead into it. What does good governance look like from your point of view in terms of thinking about the EU AI Act and agents being developed? What would be your recommendations in terms of what good governance looks like beyond just like policies sat in a folder? Because that anyone can do that. What does good governance look like in the agentic world?
Yeah, so I have kind of put quite a lot of thought into this as well, and I think the frameworks that are out there, the ISO frameworks are need to be kind of maybe not adhered to a bit, but used to build out a model and to actually understand and document in an auditable fashion how you're using your AI, what you're using your AI, and to ensure that you get the right checks and balances and the human in the loop at the right stage. So I know we've got our risk scorecard, etc., Alistair, and I think that goes some way to having a view on it. I think it needs to be a really conscious effort to actually sit down and go, okay, this is a big shiny tool that we're using. It could really move our business forward. It could really transform it. But you do need to actually have a real good sit down and map it out and use your CTO or your chief security officer if you have one, or you might not have one if you're smaller SaaS and you're starting up. But to really to wear that hat and to map it out. So I think our giving us a plug, but I think that our knowledge and our expertise is really handy at that, because we're an outside party as well, where we can come in and look at it fresh. I think there's a danger in the kind of AI API wrapper delusion in terms of just putting all your truck into the models and going, this has been built by Claude, so I could just totally stand behind it. When you cannot, pardon me, automate the workflows, because with the law, you're the deployer there, so you have a kind of legal responsibility in there, so you can't. If you're deploying it in your SaaS for legal purposes, especially for regulation as well, you need to be able to stand behind that, because you are the man, the man or the woman or the business that's actually accountable for it. So I think there's a delusion in there. Especially, let's be honest, we are AI evangelists, and we've been using it a long time. We're getting really big results from it. But Fable will hallucinate. Mythos will hallucinate. Gemini 3.5 Pro, when it comes out, will hallucinate. GPT 5.6, which is pretty unbelievable as well, that will hallucinate. So they've not really resolved those issues. And I was speaking to a client the other day, regulation, so financial regulation, and I was I used the analogy with driving tests, and I was a bit like, right, we're not allowed any majors. Are you allowed any minors? In terms of minor faults, how you could have 4 minor faults and you still pass your driving test, and you can't really have those four minor faults. Maybe misspelling a name or something, but even that, there is such a high bar for regulation, that you need to make sure that the hallucination factor, etc., is totally negated, fully negated. And how do you do that without stifling and throttling is a paradox. So yeah, I think getting a third party in to kind of review it and to look over it, and to get somebody else's viewpoint is really handy, and then have the framework that you can apply to it.
Yeah, you've written before in blog pieces about the fact that it's so powerful that it has to really be, you have to really take it seriously. And I think what I hear a lot at the moment from clients in their businesses and in meetings is they're just like, oh, just run it through Claude. It's like just run it through Claude, and then that whatever comes out is just being presented. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know what's happened to I think he was a Belgian reporter at the Guardian who I think has been who was suspended, but because hallucinations made it all the way through. So there's no point using these powerful models if you're just sharing them unchecked. So you still need the human angle, right? Which is your point.
Yeah.
And you also talked about the needing to sit down and look across the business, right? Risk with the chief information officer, it's the chief technology officer, and that was one of the reasons that we started Scale. We're 6 co-founders, and we span everything from creative and culture to technology and risk and governance. And you'd also touched on our risk and value scorecard, which we offer as a starter to understand your AI capability, but also what risks you're exposed to, what values being created. And you can get that at our website, scalewithai.com. So
I will point out one thing,
though.
I will point out one thing, that you can move massively using AI, right? You can before you could code and spin up an app, you could develop something, you could build software really, really robustly, really, really quickly. You can do deep research that will, if you use Gemini deep research or Perplexity deep research or one of the real, or Claude, I'm not a Claude person, but Claude deep research, and you could research something in about 10 minutes. That is, it's not at university dissertation level, but it's like 80%, right? So if you want to decide in terms of like what area to get into or what area to build, and I use that myself, right? So that's how I built Waste. Like that's how people say, how do you come up with the idea? And I went, well, I kept running stuff through deep research about what was a burning platform, what was going to hit small medium enterprises in the UK. How could I use AI? How could I use the skills that I've developed to get into that area? So there is a lot of opportunity there. But I think that when you're moving into the more and more autonomous and more letting the agent run away, you can get bigger rewards, but the risk does kind of also go up. And you do need to be mindful of that and apply some, just some extra layer of kind of diligence and auditability and structure around it.
Yeah, and I think that's absolutely essential. And that ability to hunt down, find the puck, where's the puck going to be? That ability now. So as well as us working with clients, we Scale now is effectively a kind of innovation laboratory as well, where we're able to spin up new ideas, new SaaS platforms, and test the market very quickly, which everybody should be doing, right? Every client should be doing. And
I'll give a story on an agent. So when OpenClaw came out, that was like, I'm going to say the end of January, and I was really building quite hard at that point. And I got myself an OpenClaw and I set it up, and I got I think I put Kimi 2.5 into it at that point, which was like one of the most powerful models at the time. That was when Kimi came out, which is a Chinese model from Moonshot, which is really powerful. And I put it in there, but then I quite quickly realized that I didn't really have a control over it, and I couldn't let it loose. So I ended up putting it into a kind of virtual machine, into a Docker, into my machine. And then, although it was great, like I could, put it on Telegram and talk to it, etc., I really curtailed it to an extent that it was just like another LLM. And then I stopped using it because it wasn't really, I kind of cut its wings so much that it couldn't fly. But that wasn't a risk that I was willing to take. I wasn't willing to give it that license, and I didn't have that understanding. So, it's one of those ones. But we're learning this as we go as well, Alistair. So we're needing to understand it. I don't think you're going to keep ahead of like how powerful the models are. So having values around your risk tolerance and what you can have, having the values and then having the kind of documentation and the rules around it, is what's required.
Yeah.
And harking back to the time at Lloyd's, that's a kind of similar framework I see to some of the kind of the risk meetings that I would go into there, and yeah, the what was it? Oh, I can't remember the big risk meeting that I went to as well. It's one of the biggest meetings I went to, and I was suitably in amongst all the super risk people. But you do need to have that in there. Maybe not. There's got to be leeway because we're software. SaaS is our software. We're trying to develop. You need to adapt quickly. You're up against competition that's working really quick as well, so everyone's really working really quickly. The ability to develop now has totally been commoditized. So those with ideas can spin them up really quickly. You need to keep it at the front edge of that. So it is it's dynamic, but having somebody there with you is really helpful. So
I think it's essential, somebody to bounce it off, and that's why we built the scorecard in order to get a view across 8 core areas, and using all of the human skills that we have inside Scale. You mentioned Lloyd's there helping. We've helped all of these businesses with their technology transformation over the years. And look, there's some great insights there, some great stories, Alistair. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Really,
that's good. I love
really
it.
Great.
It's you're talking about a topic that I absolutely love.
Yeah.
I was watching. I think I said to you before we joined. I was watching Naval Ravikant on a podcast, and he was saying, once you love something, you don't memorize it. And I feel that I came into this right. I'm just going to shoot from the hip and bring it all from the grey matter, my understanding. And I think you need to, but then when you're really deploying it, you do need to have those rules around it as well. So
you've got to have the guidance. I mean, imagine how I feel. I went to uni in the mid 90s, and I read artificial intelligence because I was excited about the future, and then it all just went away. So I'm giddy now, right? I loving working at Scale with you all, and we're right at the vanguard, and it is very, very exciting. It's fantastic. I mean, you talked about the hallucinations there. I think that would be a big one if new models were able to eviscerate that just down to a few minors. Now we'd be talking about a new kind of game. So it's very exciting to see. We could talk about it all day, but we can't. We're going to have to stop there. However, if you're liking the chat about the EU AI Act, 2 weeks on Friday, we've got a show that is on the Friday before the EU Act comes out, and we've got some guests from different areas that are coming to speak about that, and we'll share that out on the platforms. But I'm going to wrap it up there. Thank you so much for your time, my friend.
Yeah, I know. Thank you very much. Thoroughly enjoyed it. And just when I leave, big shout out. Good luck to England tomorrow night. I've been loving this World Cup. So good luck to all the teams, because I'm sure we'll have people from different countries on. But big up to England, and I hope you guys go over the line.
That's very good of you. Okay, we'll leave it there. Thanks. Goodbye. Bye.
Cheers. Thanks all.
Bye.